Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Sanders Aquatics. Tonight, and for a couple of different intros here, we're going to show you how we breed the gourami. The gourami is hands down my favorite fish. I love these guys. They're bullies, don't get me wrong. They have a tendency to get a little aggressive in tanks sometimes. Of course, I got Bentley. Bentley, you want to say hi?
Hi, guys.
So the way we set this up, and I got to go back here a little bit. The reason that I love these gouramis is my dad. My dad's kept fish my entire life. The entire time I've known it, and the reason that I kept fish was my dad. I look up to the guy, I idolize the guy, and if I get to be half the man he is, I'll be one heck of a dude. But when I first bred gouramis when I was a teenager, he's the one that showed me how to do it. I didn't get a very high yield rate, but I did get a couple gouramis out of it, and it was neat for me. It was the first time I'd ever bred fish. I've done it quite a few more times since then, and we've gotten pretty good at it. So the way we set up our tanks here, the tank is set up, we use a cheap decoration. Like this castle here allows the female to have somewhere to get away and hide from the male. We keep a sponge filter in there. It's a very seated sponge filter. This actually had a bunch of old gouramis. Our last batch, we'll show you these guys here a little later on. We turn the filter off and have introduced the male. I usually put the male in for about a day, and then I'll introduce the female. So tonight I'm going to introduce the female. We'll get her in there, and that should get these guys up and going. You kind of want to condition them there for probably a week or two. Feed them some high protein stuff, bloodworms, brine shrimp, things along those lines. That gets them ramped up and rearing and ready to go. So what to expect out of this? The male's going to go through, and he's going to generate, and he's going to make a bubble nest up at the top of the tank. So what we do, we try to, and I use very, very basic stuff. I use pieces of a styrofoam plate. It's really simple. It floats. It creates a little gap in the water there for them. And when they do that, they'll go through and he'll lay the nest in that, and it just gets massive. And then he'll take the female and he'll basically wrap around her, squeeze the eggs out of her and fertilize them. And he'll take the eggs and he'll put them up in the nest, and he will guard them at that point. Once that happens, it's time to get the female out of there because he's going to get super duper duper mean, and he's going to go after her. And unfortunately, it won't be pretty if you don't get her out of there. The trick to that is that you cannot have any movement on the top of the water because that nest is on the top of the water and it can't have any movement. So we've actually turned off our sponge filter here to allow him to put the nest up. I thought he would have built the nest. Sometimes they do when you first put him in there. Right now, he's being super shy and he's hiding. I think he's actually hiding back there in that castle. But we're going to take you through step by step on what they do, how they do what they do. I probably won't be able to catch them pulling eggs on there, but I'll be able to show you what to look for and how to tell whether there's eggs in the nest, and we'll show you what to do from there. So we'll be back here in a day or two here once they've got the nest laid and the eggs are in there. And then all right, so it's been 2 days since we've had the gourami set up here, and unfortunately you can't see them. They are hiding in here and they're being extremely shy for some reason. Sometimes you go to set this stuff up and it absolutely fails. My dad used to tell me stories about him breeding gouramis, and he worked in a pet store when he was young, and he would breed them in a little box on the floor and raise them out and sell them back to the pet store. These guys, we give them an ideal dream setup here, and for whatever reason, our male has decided not to do his job and go through and lay his nest and do what he's supposed to do. If you go more than about 2 or 3 days into this, you need to take them back out, separate these guys, try to fatten them back up again, come back into it here in a couple of days down the line and let them go at it again. Usually works. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 tries. But if you go too long like this male will get extremely aggressive and he's just not going to do his job. It looks like he was trying to go through and maybe set up a bubble nest, and we got a little bit here. But we've had to filter off for 2 days, and I've tried to do this and stretch too far sometimes, and it takes me a long time to nurse these fish back to health after you've let them be in not what I would like as the perfect conditions, but it's the perfect breeding conditions. So we're going to pull these guys back out. We'll probably just take the female out, leave the male in here, turn the filter back on, fatten them back up here for the next couple of days, and then we'll go back at it again. But we'll come back with you here in about 2 or 3 days, let you know where we're at. All right, guys, we're back here, and it's actually the next night after. We were going to pull the female last night, and it was really late when we shot that part of the video and decided we were going to go ahead and pull them and separate them. I waited till the next morning. We got up a little bit early so that I'd go through and pull the female out of the tank to let them separate and try to get back together. And I had a big old nest in here. Put up a picture right here so that you can see what the nest looks like. At this point, you want to watch the nest, and you're basically going to go through and you're going to look for little black dots inside of that nest. That's the point that you know you have eggs in the nest. We got Bentley. Bentley's going to give us a few facts here tonight. We'll chime him in here periodically. He's going to have a good time with us here too. So Bentley, once you have the nest and it's all up and running, who takes care of the nest?
The male.
The male? We're going to call him Mr. Mom?
Sure.
Sure? That's all I get is just a sure?
Yeah.
Okay, so now the nest is set up and the male's going to take care of the nest. What do you do with the girl? You just leave her in there?
Remove her from the tank.
Definitely. You gotta get the girl out of the tank. Because once the nest is set up, that male, he's going to go there and he's going to protect that nest with everything he's got. And he's going to put everything he has into it. That is part of the reason that we have the tank set up we have the way we have it. We've got the little castle in there for her to barricade herself into. We left the sponge filter in there to be able to hide into that. And it's a very seated sponge filter. It actually raised up a bunch of our babies that were in here. But while we're sitting here, you can actually see the male sitting in here. He's going to continue to tend to that nest. And that's what he's going to do. And periodically, he's going to go over to her and he's going to try to coax her up into there so he can get the eggs out of her. He's going to put them up in the nest. And at that point, she's got to go. The biggest part of this, with it being a bubble nest and sitting at the top of the water, is you cannot disturb the surface of the water. So when you're going to get her out of there, you got to be very, very careful not to disturb the surface of it. She's going to be tired. He's going to wear her out. And she just had a baby. I don't know if any of y'all have been with a woman when she'd had a baby. They're usually pretty wore out. You do everything you can to take care of them. But you got to get her back, nurse back to health and feed her some good food and stuff from there. At that point, you want to leave him in there for a couple of days until you start seeing some free swimmers. For the first about 2 days, he's going to help them to get out of the nest, bring them out, let them swim around, and he's going to continue to put them back up in the nest and keep them corralled. Once he stops corralling them, that's where he needs to come out of the tank too. What we actually use on our gouramis, and it's kind of an oddball thing, we actually use egg yolk to go through and raise the fry at the beginning. What you do, you take your hard-boiled egg, go through, or take an egg and you hard-boil it. Take the white off of it and you take the egg yolk out. Take the egg yolk, you put it in the net, and smush it into a bunch of water, and you make you a real fine powdered, watery, yolky stuff. What we do to help offset this so that we can feed this, because it will create a lot of waste, is we'll take mystery snails and we'll put them in the tank once the babies are out. And the mystery snails will go through and they will eat all of the extra waste and stuff, and you don't have to worry a whole lot about it at that point. So we're going to give you a few facts here. The gouramis, I love gouramis. These are our Gold Gourami pair. We've got blue gouramis, we got platinum gouramis, we got sparkling gouramis. There's so many different kinds of these. My favorite is the opaline gourami. I don't have a tank that's massive enough. These guys are humongous. If you've ever seen a giant gourami, they are humongous, and they are just some mean boogers too, though. You got to be careful what you do with them, and you need a swimming pool to keep them. But a few facts here. Bentley, what kind of water temperature you want to keep these guys in?
Temperature needs to be 75 or 82 degrees.
Yeah, 75 to 82 degrees, somewhere in that range. These guys are not real picky. They'll eat about whatever too. Great semi-aggressive fish. You can't keep them with super nice fish. The males are usually more bullies. The golds and the blues are a little tougher. You get into some of the sparkling guys, they're a little easier to get along with. A lot more passive. How about a neat fact? You got any neat facts about these? I know you got into it with the axolotl there. We found a mutant, right? What about these guys? What can they do?
A gourami can breathe air.
They can breathe air? Like a person? Can they walk across the land?
No.
No, they can't walk across the land. So the gourami, they actually come from Asia. So a lot of them were brought up, they were in like rice paddies and stuff, real poor water quality. So they have a labyrinth lung that will allow them to actually breathe air to help them to survive. And to be honest with you, a lot of the tanks that I do fish in cycles with, that I don't sit and wait the weeks and weeks and weeks, I use gouramis to do it. Gouramis are super, super hardy fish, just phenomenal fish. Like I said earlier, one of my favorites. I'm a little partial. So these guys from here, we keep the tank just like you see here. Every fry tank I ever have where I'm going to grow fry out in, I grow a whole bunch of algae inside of. I got a few live plants. I got some hornwort in there. I got a big mass of algae ball in there to allow lots of microorganisms. Now, when these guys breed, they are going to breed hundreds of fish at a time. It's just massive, massive, massive amounts of them. It is tough to keep that many of them alive, and you're probably going to keep 100 to 150. The trick to keeping that many is you have to pull the trailers out. And by trailers, I mean there's going to be fish that are going to grow at different paces. You're going to have some that are going to grow a lot faster. You get bigger ones in that tank, they got to come out. They will eat their smaller baby brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, the circle of life is just what they do. But from here, it's really, really easy. You want to go through, like I said, we use egg yolk. You can use some first bites and things along those lines, I think, but you're going to want to feed them about 3 times a day. There's going to be a whole boatload of them. So I strongly recommend to find you something in there that you can overfeed this tank. We use snails a lot for our fry tanks. They don't bother the fry. They don't hurt the fry, and they eat a lot of waste there for us so that we can do stuff like that. I'm going to show you our last batch of gouramis here. This is the last babies. They're probably about 3 months old. We haven't bred these guys here in a little bit. It's not a super high demand for them, but they're in every single pet store, so I don't know why there's not a super high demand for them. Kind of keeps my head scratched a little bit. But here, we'll show you our baby tank here. You guys want to step over here and show you where all right, so we got our babies here. This is our last batch that we bred out. And I unfortunately had forgotten the rule of thumb to pull the runners out of the tank, to pull the bigger ones out and separate them. So when we first had these and they were first growing out, we probably had 100, 150 fish. And they were in this actually exact tank is where we bred them out at. But you'll notice that you got a couple of different sizes in here. Got a couple bigger ones, couple smaller ones in there. We keep a few live plants. And I got a boatload of these pest snails in there. I know everybody hates pest snails, but when you're growing up fish and you're trying to power feed, snails are the best thing to really clean up. They're not going to get killed. They're not going to get eaten. And they're just going to clean them. They're going to do a lot of your work for you. Makes life easy. But if you've ever bred gouramis, breeding betas, anything along those lines, they're all kind of the same thing, but betas are a little different because you got to have lots of spots for all the males once you get to separating those. They're fun to breed though, by the way. But same concept. If you've got tips, tricks, anything, please let us know. But from here, please like us, share us, subscribe. It means the absolute world to us. We've got 120 something subscribers right now. It keeps growing, and I feel like we're doing a good job. I think we're sharing great information with everybody, and we're trying to pass along what we find. But thanks again for watching.
Sanders Aquatics.